چرا اینجوری میشه؟ من نمیدونم اصلا. ای خدا، یه لحظه. چرا تصویرش نمیاد اصلا؟ من نمیدونم. اومد. یه لحظه من درخواست بدم بیاد. Hello, sir.
Hello, Ramin. Can you see me now?
Yes, I hear you and see you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, okay. Let's please. You read the questions.
Yes.
Okay. I ask you first question. Sir. First of all, I want to ask you. You ask from Susan my mail or not? I send you a mail about the Susan, your wife.
Yes. But I don't understand. Maybe we should just do the interview now.
Oh. I can receive any mail from Susan.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I ask from you. Please introduce yourself completely and brief.
Okay. My name is Kelly James Clark. I'm Senior Research Fellow at the Kaufman Interfaith Institute in Grand Rapids, Michigan at Grand Valley State University. I earned my PhD in philosophy at the University of Notre Dame. My dissertation director was Alvin Plantinga. And I got interested in philosophy when I took a course as an undergraduate. My very first semester, I'm a religious believer, and the professor tried to argue that there was no grounds for religious belief, that religious belief was irrational. And I decided then that I would see for myself what grounds there was for rational religious belief. And that sparked my interest in philosophy. I majored in philosophy as an undergraduate.
Yes.
I also majored in religious studies, and I went to Notre Dame to earn my PhD. And then I taught philosophy for over 30 years.
Okay. And sir, on what date you born? You say that?
I work in philosophy of religion mostly.
No. You're born. Your birth date.
Oh, born. I was born in 1956 in the United States.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your answer. Question of two. I want to start the question about philosophy. Philosophy itself. Do philosophy or philosophers set criteria for those who went to become a philosopher? In other words, what should one do if one went to have they set component and criteria or not? Or as the Iranian poet Rumi, the Maulana says that if anyone is in dubbed, he is a hidden philosopher in the world. What's your opinion about this, sir?
Well, when many people find out that I am a philosopher, they say to me, well, isn't everybody a philosopher?
Okay.
And I think what they mean is, and I agree with this, that everybody has philosophical beliefs. And the person in doubt is a hidden philosopher. If a person has doubts about God or the nature of morality or the best way for a government to be set up and run, if you have doubts about that or thoughts about that, well, in one sense, you're a philosopher. So in that sense, I think everyone is a philosopher. And yet, not everybody does what I do. I taught philosophy for 30 years at a university. I've written or edited over 30 books in philosophy. And there are criteria for becoming that kind of professional philosopher. To become a professional philosopher, you have to go to university and earn a PhD. You have to learn quite a bit. You have to develop arguments for the things that you believe. And so so I think everybody is a philosopher in one sense, but not everybody is a professional philosopher. That takes a lot of training, a lot of schooling, and a lot of time.
Okay. Thanks for your brief answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I ask another question. Have you read Stace's book on mysticism and philosophy? In that book, Stace tried to draw the line between genuine religious and mysticism experience and false religious and mystical experiences, and to find common mysticism experiences and characteristics in order to distinguish genius experience from non-genius ones based on those characteristics philosophy. Are there comments? Are there components for philosophical theories in philosophy?
Let me answer that part first, Ramin.
What?
Let me answer the first part.
I can't hear you. Please repeat again.
Let me answer the first question about religious experience. Okay?
You can answer?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say.
Thank you. Please answer, please.
Ramin asked if there's any criteria for genuine mystical or religious experiences.
Yes.
And I think there are criteria for genuine religious or mystical experiences. And I think if somebody really has had a mystical experience or a religious experience of God, like really of God, a real mystical experience, it means that they've become, tight, close, in union with love and justice. I think those are the two most important characteristics of God, are love and justice.
Yes.
So if somebody has had a real experience of God, then we would expect them to become more loving and more just. And oftentimes people that claim to have an experience of God become less loving. They become more closed in, more judgmental, more, I guess, vicious and less just. And I think that could not have come out of a genuine encounter with God. So real mystical experiences should transform the person that experiences them and experiences God, and that should make people more loving and more just.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just one question. No need to demarcate in philosophy. No need.
I think there's no need to demarcate in philosophy. Demarcation was usually between science on the one side and non-science on the other side, and people that were really concerned about the demarcation thought that there was science on one side, and they often thought everything on the other side was nonsense. And all important claims are in the science area, and so we have to demarcate that from nonsense. And I think that's silly. I don't think there's a fine line that separates science from non-science. I think science, supposedly on this side of the line, involves a lot of faith and belief and philosophical commitments. And I think science can inform philosophy. So I don't like lines of demarcation. They're usually by arrogant people who want to say what they study, what they do is eminently reasonable, and what everyone else does on the other side of the line is unreasonable or irrational, or maybe even just silly or nonsense. So I tend not to like lines of demarcation. I don't think there are any sharp lines that demarcate philosophy from other areas of inquiry, or science from other areas of inquiry, or science even from non-science. But even if there is, I don't think that what lies on the other side of the line from science is nonsense. I think there are important domains of inquiry that are not properly part of scientific inquiry.
Okay. So I thought that the demarcation is necessary to philosophy, but you could answer and could explain. Thank you for answer. Sir, another question. This is: has philosophy been able to bear useful within society in practice, or has it been merely more theory and rhetoric?
I think a lot of philosophy can be very abstract and very distant from people's lives. And yet I think a lot of philosophy has had a really big practical effect or social effect. Practical effect on people's lives, social effect on human history, on human societies. So I think some of the intellectual like developers or defenders of democracy, for example, John Locke, Rousseau, and others, I think that they gave people a way to think about how societies should be organized, apart from thinking that they should be run by kings who rule by divine right. They began to transfer the rule to the people, which I think is a good thing. And also they began to think that human beings are equal. And that was a big, major, I think, intellectual accomplishment, a spiritual accomplishment, a moral accomplishment. And I think philosophers contributed to that. They weren't the only ones, but I think they contributed to that. I think philosophers have helped for women to gain equality in certain parts of the world. So I think philosophers have had a big impact. Not everyone, not all the time. Much of philosophy is very abstract, but a lot of philosophy has had a big impact on individual human beings and on human history.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks. The number 5 question. There is a question about philosophy, and that is whether the world is really complex. That philosophy has not yet been able to answer the issues and the problems. So, uh, issues and the problem of the world, or the philosophy itself has complicated the issues and the problem of the world. Uh, what's your opinion, sir?
This is a really big question, Ramin, and it would take a long time
Yes.
to answer it
You
fairly.
say yes, sir. Yes. Yes.
But I will say that that the world is very complex, and that many times our desire to philosophize is to try to simplify it, to make it less complex. And sometimes that's good, but other times it ignores how complex the world is, and we have to resist the effort to simplify or reduce our thoughts
Okay.
to in very very simple, easy to explain ways. That we want that as human beings, but the world is so complex. We need to let it be complex, and then we need to understand it. It might be hard to develop a theory to explain everything, and people are really different too, and people are satisfied with different sorts of theories. But in general, we like to or want to simplify, reduce, make things easier, explain everything, see our place in it. But all of those are really hard to do because the world is so complex.
This is a big question. Thank you for your answer. The number six question, sir. I want to ask a question about the Islamic philosophy. You read about the Islamic philosophy. Okay. In your opinion, what the position of Islamic philosophy and Islamic philosophers in the history of philosophy? Have Muslim philosopher helped in the development of philosophy or not?
Yeah, good question. As you know, I'm a Christian philosopher, and I grew up in the United States. And in the United States, when you learn, and in fact, in most of the West, when you learn philosophy, you learn Christian philosophy. For the Middle Ages, you learn Greek philosophy, and then you learn European philosophy. But I never, ever studied a Muslim philosopher when I was a student. And that was a mistake because I've learned later that Muslim philosophers have become, have made a really big impact on the history of philosophy. Many of my favorite Christian philosophers, like Thomas Aquinas, were really influenced by Muslim philosophers. And that's how I got interested in them, by philosophers that I liked, learning about their influence on Muslim philosophers' influence on Christian philosophers. I also got interested in some Muslim philosophy because I'm friends with William Lane Craig, and he defended the Kalam cosmological argument that was developed by Muslim thinkers. And it's a brilliant argument. And so that also got me interested in it. I think it's still sad that, by and large, people in the West don't really study Muslim philosophers when they're learning. I think that's a mistake, and it needs to be changed. And I'm trying to change that as best I can. The work I do, I try to bring Muslim and Christian philosophers together and to learn from each other.
Thank you. Sir, just a little question. Which Muslim philosopher do you like?
Well, my favorite is Al-Ghazali. He holds the views. Al-Ghazali?
Al-Ghazali. Yes. You keep.
Yeah, say it in Persian or in Farsi. So he's my favorite.
Ghazali. Me too. Al-Ghazali. Just Ghazali.
No, I like Ibn Arabi, Ibn Sina. I mean, I like a lot of them. Probably all the famous ones. Even if I disagree, I think they're really brilliant philosophers that need to be understood with respect. Even if I disagree, it doesn't matter to me.
It's very good. And about Al-Ghazali, it's very good. Sir, let's do question number 7. What's your opinion about the peace, love, education? That is, do we just have theories and nothing practical to achieve peace?
Well, I think it's good to theorize about peace and love and to understand it better. I have 2 of my most recent books were on tolerance and compassion and peace. So I'm very interested in philosophers getting involved in making the world a better place, in bringing peace to the world. I'm writing a book now on love, and the book is on love in the Abrahamic tradition, in Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. But it's not enough to write books and to theorize. People need to get out and work for peace. And I think the best thing we can do in working for peace is for us to meet each other and listen to each other and learn from each other. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. For example, a lot of Americans misunderstand Islam. They misunderstand Muslims. And as a result, they think that most Muslims are terrorists. And as you know, I think that's silly. I've written many blogs in newspapers against that view. But I think there's no hope for, say, Western American Christian views of Muslims. There's no hope unless they meet Muslims and talk to them. And again, I think they need to listen to them. We're not very good listeners. And I think
yes,
when people can encounter other people, it really changes what you think. You can't look another human being in the eye and talk to them and try to understand them, and you can't walk away unchanged from that. So I think that there won't be peace in the world. There won't be Christians and Muslims aren't going to come together. Christians, Muslims, and Jews aren't going to come together unless we can all meet and talk to each other and try to understand each other, and learn to love each other.
Thank you. It's a very nice answer. Thank you. Sir, according to Aristotle, who divided philosophy into three parts. Do you value theoretical philosophy the most, or practical philosophy? Which one can be considered useful in solving the problem of the world?
So I'm going to say this, but this is only about me. I'm a philosopher. I wouldn't be a philosopher if I didn't like the theoretical ideas the most. So I love theoretical ideas. I love abstract arguments. That's what I did as a philosopher. That is my personality. I also love other human beings, and I've learned that I can write books about topics, but that I can't change the world unless I leave my room and go out and meet people and bring people together. So I really do love theoretical philosophy. I think, and I value it, and I think other people should value it. Not everyone should do practical philosophy. But if you want to change the world, if you're that kind of person, then you need to leave your office. And I tell people who aren't philosophers, they need to go out of their home and they need to meet someone who is different from them. They need to just leave their homes and go and invite someone into their home for a meal or for a cup of coffee. So it's a long answer, but I love abstract philosophy, and I think it doesn't change things that much. But I think most things don't change things that much, except meeting people and working together for peace.
Okay. Let's get back to your interests, if it's possible. What do you think are the most important issues in philosophy? Has it been resolved yet or not? Which issues are you most interested in? Which issues?
Yeah, I now myself am most interested in issues of the rationality of religious belief, the problem of evil, and then also in issues of compassion and peace and tolerance. Those issues interest me the most. Again, that tells you a lot about me. It doesn't say anything about the most important issues in philosophy. There are lots of them, and different people value the issues differently than I do. And that's okay. There are different kinds of people with different interests. But I'm interested in issues around God and evil and suffering and compassion and peace and tolerance. Those are all issues that I'm interested in.
This about the problem of evil, as you know, and I more ask about the problem of evil from you, sir. How can we reduce the suffering and morally evil in the world. It's from theoretical or practical way.
Well, I think if you really want to relieve suffering in the world, you'll be better at that if you become a doctor, and
please,
that will relieve suffering.
Sir, excuse me. Please slowly a bit speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. People will relieve more suffering in the world if they become a doctor. Or people will relieve more suffering in the world if they do what my daughter does. She works to create jobs for low-income women in developing countries. There are lots of ways to relieve suffering in the world. Becoming a philosopher is not the best way. It's one of the worst ways that I know to do it. And it's one of the worst ways, not because it's bad to be a philosopher, but because philosophers are, they're primarily professors, they're primarily teachers. They write books. So I don't think you should expect that the job of the philosopher is to relieve suffering in the world.
Yes.
But if that is your concern and it's your most important concern, then I would recommend not becoming a philosopher. I'd recommend becoming some sort of caregiver or work in development.
Okay, thank you. Just one thing, the theoretical way useful or practical, which practical or theoretical?
I'm sorry, ask that question
Which
again.
choice? Yes.
I don't think you need to choose, and I think people should follow their interests if they're interested in philosophy.
Yes. I mean that which is better way? Which is better way? The practical way or theoretical way for reduce the suffering in the world?
Well, the practical way is much better, but not everybody needs to do that all the time. So it's much better for reducing suffering, but it's also a good thing for someone to ask, are God and evil logically incompatible? And then try to really look deeply at the structure of logic, the structure of possibility and impossibility, at the nature of God, at the nature of suffering. That's a good thing too. It doesn't relieve any suffering, but it's a noble task for somebody to pursue.
Okay, thank you. It's a good answer. Thank you. Doesn't it the 10th question or the question of 11? When do you
I think we're at 13.
13?
Yes.
No, it is. I ask a little question that
okay.
I don't write this in the file.
Oh, okay.
When do you think peace happens in societies, and what is the need for peace? Can this be achieved with the right training and education?
Well, some people think that peace is there is no war, when people are not fighting. And I think that's one definition of peace, and the definition is fine, but that's not how I understand peace in its deepest and richest sense.
Yes.
I understand peace as when society is so structured that each person's needs are satisfied and each person can fulfill their nature as fully as possible. That there's a kind of wholeness, or in Hebrew, the word shalom, that people in community are connecting with each other, needs are being met, suffering is lessened, people are helping people who suffer, and then every human being is allowed to be as fully human as they can possibly be. They're not starving, they're not cold, they have adequate food, shelter, and clothing so that they can become the kind of person that they're meant to be. I view all of that as peace, as shalom, as wholeness. And I don't see any societies very close to that. I think maybe many ancient societies were more like that. And we have a need for peace because people are suffering, because people, and not just suffering because there's war, but suffering because within societies, people aren't connecting to each other in any deep and meaningful way. So there's no peace without justice in a society, without equality. I could go on and on what I think is real peace for a society. I think training and education would help. I think you can train for peace and flourishing, or educate for peace and flourishing, but we don't really do that much at all. At least in America, we do not train for peace. We try to make everybody the same, and we try to say we're all the same, but then many people are, we don't understand people who are different from us. And peace requires us for us to live not just without fighting with people who are different from us, but really deeply connecting with people who are different from us, and contributing to their lives, and then contributing to our lives as well.
Okay, thanks for your answering. Please let me say hello to Dr. Siahat. سلام دکتر سیاحت عزیز، خیلی خوش آمدید. Okay, sir. Did philosophy successful in solving the world problems?
Well, that's a really big and broad question, and it's very hard to answer.
Yes,
philosophers,
a brief question, just.
Yeah. Philosophers themselves, and sometimes what they think about it, have been applied to solving the world's problems. They've also contributed to the world's problems, because human beings have contributed to the world's problems, and philosophers are human beings. So philosophers have contributed to thinking that some people should be slaves. Aristotle thought that. Many philosophers have argued that women are not fully rational, so women are not the equals of men. Many philosophers have said that. And then many philosophers as well have argued that no human being should be treated as a slave, should be owned and bought and sold by other human beings. And so philosophers have been involved in the abolition of the slave trade. They've been involved in getting human beings to think what's true, that women are equal to men. They've been involved in development issues, what's the best way to give money to actually make things better. So there's a new movement called effective altruism. I'll type it in. Effective.
Okay.
Altruism.
Sir.
This man, I'm almost done.
Yes, sir.
These are effective altruism was led by many people who are philosophers, and altruism is when you show kindness to other people. And then, well, how do you do that effectively? And they look at if you give mosquito netting to reduce malaria, does that really help people? And they found out that people that used, malaria comes from mosquitoes. And they thought if they just gave people mosquito netting, the mosquitoes couldn't come in to the netting and bite them at night. But they found out that in one country, people used the mosquito netting to catch fish. The netting had some poison in it, and the poison began to hurt all of the fishing industry. So they figured out that you can do nice things, you can intend to do nice things, but the result can be bad. And so effective altruism began to look at how can we really do good in the world. It's very new, and it was started by philosophers. So there are many ways philosophers have tried to contribute to the common good. Sometimes they've done bad. Mostly, I think philosophers are irrelevant to most societies. And sometimes they've done good. And sometimes the good is really good.
Okay. Sir, just I forget to ask the rest of the question. Can I say the rest of the question?
Yeah. I sort of answered it, so maybe we should go to the next question.
No. The rest of question. If you read the 20 question, has it been successful at all? In what issues? I forget ask from you this question in the 20 question. Has philosophy successful at all in what issues the successful? Just in the 2 or 3 sentence, can you answer?
Well, I've already said that it's helped. Philosophers were involved in the abolition of slavery, in the equality of women, and in how best to give money to help people who are suffering. Those are 3 areas where I think it's been successful.
Okay. Thank you. The next question that is it possible for those religious affiliation to interfere with theories, religious excuse me, apologize. Affiliations that everyone adheres to in the course of theorizing and philosophizing and presenting theories. For example, Plantinga's books at philosophical issues, especially the philosophy of religion, from the perspective of Protestantism, and Richard Swinburne's from perspective of Orthodox, and Raymond Van Aragon is also Protestantism. And I think that Catholic You are Catholic?
I am not a Catholic.
Okay. Is this involvement of personal affairs in the theorizing correct?
Well, I will just say this first and foremost. I think everyone has a sense of what's true, and that shapes how they approach philosophy. So there's nobody that thinks without some sense of how the world is. So religious believers think the world is a certain way, and atheists think the world is a certain way. Well, atheists philosophize from a perspective of no God, and it affects how they philosophize. I think all of philosophy, everybody thinks that that the truth lies in that direction, or it lies in that direction, or maybe in that direction, and then they try to think themselves to the truth. So everybody does this. It's not just philosophy of religion. It's not just philosophers of religion. It's not just religious believers. It's everybody: atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Christian, Jew. Everybody thinks from a perspective and thinks they need to move in a certain direction. It can help you understand things. Philosophy can help you understand things. But I personally don't know how anybody can theorize without being a person first. So I think that that's just what it means to theorize, is for a person to theorize, given who they are at this time, what they believe, what they value, and then try to understand that better.
Thank you, sir. Sir, just have your religious views influenced your books?
Yeah, they have. I think there's a God. I think there's a God who's created us. I think there's a God who's created us using natural law.
Okay.
So thinking those things have really influenced how I think about philosophy and how I do philosophy. And I think it's better if people are honest about what their personal stance is. What do you take to be the place where you start when you're thinking? And everybody starts somewhere. No one starts on neutral ground and then reasons from nothing to the truth. We start where we are as human beings.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for your answering. Next question for the 14th question. Mention on the name of the 10 most influence book in you. In other words, mention say the name of the 10 book, 10 most influential book you have ever read. The most influential in your thought and actions. You can write or say, please.
Okay. Well, I don't just say this because I'm a Christian, but I think the Bible has been really influential for me, but especially the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Luke?
Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Okay.
Okay, these are the first 3 chapters of the New Testament, and they're my favorite parts of the Bible, and they've had a big influence on how I think and act. So those are probably my 3 favorites. If you want more philosophical books, I've been really influenced by William James.
Okay.
In his book called Pragmatism. This book's probably had the biggest single influence.
You write these books or not? You write these?
I'm typing them.
James. Thank you.
I'm typing them in so people can see if they want.
Thank you. William James, Pragmatism. Okay, thanks.
Ernest Becker.
Ernest Becker.
He's a psychologist. And this book had a big influence on me, The Denial of Death. That book had a really big influence on me. Nicholas Walterstorff. Lament for a Son. His son died when he was maybe 23 or 24 years old. And so Nicholas Walterstorff is a philosopher, and he laments for his son. It's really a beautiful book, very powerful. And he also wrote this book,
his book,
Until Justice and Peace Embrace. So these are issues that I really She's a philosopher. She died maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and she had a big influence on me.
This is my favorite philosopher, the Marlene McWard-Adams.
Yeah, I love her work a lot.
She's like you as the favorite philosopher and the best philosopher.
She had a very big influence on me. So, and the biggest influence has been Alvin Plantinga.
Alvin Plantinga, okay. Sir, you Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox? Can I ask this question from you or not?
I'm probably closest to Protestant, but I don't like divisions in Christianity. So I'm anti-division. But I grew up as a Protestant Christian.
Oh, I understand. Okay, you write near the temple.
I think they add up to 10.
You write later if you have time.
Okay.
Thank you. Please, the next.
Let me mention one more. I like this book a lot.
What?
This book had a big influence on me. And it's not by a philosopher. It's by
what? The Tolstoy books. The Tolstoy books is.
This is a book with many, many philosophical ideas, and she is a beautiful writer. Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. And it had a big influence on me. It really helped me become a better writer and want to be a better writer. And she writes about what? I'm sorry?
It's a nice book, I think, and I don't read this book. I try to find this book in the internet.
Yeah, it is a great book.
It's great. Okay. Can I ask in the next question from you? You type me the 10 book after this interview.
Okay, I'll send the books after.
Thank you. Sir, what factors do you consider to be the cause of the stagnation of Islamic philosophy and the lack of dynamism in Islamic philosophy? Does philosophy in the present age mean Western philosophy?
Well, sadly, I think philosophy in the present age means Western philosophy. I don't think Chinese philosophy has a very big influence. I don't think Islamic philosophy has an influence. I don't think Buddhist philosophy has an influence. Indian philosophy doesn't have much of an influence. The biggest, the most famous people in philosophy are all in the United States or Western Europe. I think there are reasons for this. I don't know what happened in Islam, but I think Islam's golden age. There was an age where Islam was they had the greatest philosophy in the world, the golden age, maybe 300 years and 400 years, and then it stopped. And I don't know why it stopped, but it did stop. And then two things have happened in Muslim majority countries, except for Iran. Iran has many really good philosophers.
Yes, yes.
I know many of them. I think many of them are much better than I am. They publish in really good Western journals. So there are some excellent ones in Iran, but otherwise in Muslim majority countries, all they do is study the people from the golden age. Muslim philosophers just tell you what somebody said 600 years ago or 700 years ago or 800 years ago. They don't do philosophy now. They just tell you what somebody wrote 1,000 years ago. That's one reason that Islamic philosophy is not taken very seriously. The other is at most of the schools that teach philosophy, you don't learn much contemporary philosophy, so you don't learn modern symbolic logic. You learn Aristotelian logic. But nobody in the West, Aristotelian logic is outdated. It's not bad. It's just very limiting. And if you're not taught modern symbolic logic, for example, if you're not taught cognitive science, if you're not taught contemporary philosophy of science, philosophy of biology, there are lots of things that you need to be taught to really understand in a deep way how it is that we know things, what it means to be a human being. I'd say that one of the biggest influences that I've seen in philosophy in the past 30 years is how various sciences can help us understand many, many different areas in philosophy, psychology, biology, physics. So many people in Western philosophy learn. My smartest student teaches philosophy of physics, and so he has learned a lot of physics. He wants to know, how does God work in the world? But he thinks if he's going to write about that, he needs to know the best theories of how things work in our world. So he has a degree, an advanced degree in physics and an advanced degree in mathematics. And he publishes in physics journals. But he's a philosopher. And I just don't know many Muslim scholars, except in Iran. I don't know many around the world that are taking insights from science and trying to incorporate into and update their thought. I mostly hear, this is what I hear when I hear someone try to tell me what Al-Ghazali said, or what the Mutazilites said, or what the Ash'aris said, or what this school said, or what that school said. I hear this: we were great once. And my advice is, okay, be great again. Don't be happy that 1,000 years ago, Islamic thinkers led thinking. Do something now to make Islamic thought great again. Start a new golden age. Yeah.
Yes.
And there have been many. There have been many in the 20th century, many Christian philosophers who have had a big influence on philosophical thought. I already mentioned Alvin Plantinga and Nicholas Walterstorff and Marilyn Adams. You mentioned Richard Swinburne, Marilyn's husband, Robert Adams, Peter Van Inwagen. Many of the greatest philosophers of the second half of the 20th century were Christian philosophers. And, but there weren't any Muslim philosophers. And there's no reason there should not be great Muslim philosophers and great Muslim philosophy. I would take it as a challenge. If I were Muslim, I would take it as a challenge to figure out how we could make Islamic thought great again.
Yes, sir. Do you know Mullah Sadra in Islamic philosophy?
Yeah.
All Iranian thinkers attribute the causation of Islamic philosophy to Mullah Sadra. Do you agree with this theory or not?
I have no opinion. Some Muslims can tell me. I haven't read Mullah Sadra. I've just heard that he's very influential. So yeah, I have no opinion.
The Sajjad Rizvi agree with this theory. Okay, I ask next question. Your answer is very good and very brief and very nice. Thank you. The 16th question: does philosophy in the present age have the ability to, as before, that Plato and Aristotle had Descartes, Schopenhauer, Kant, and it, does he have the ability to reach such a flourishing and golden age in the present age?
Well, I think you should not overestimate Plato and Aristotle and Descartes and Schopenhauer and Kant. Here's a way to put the present age. I think more books and articles were published in philosophy in the first 50 years of the 20th century than in the previous 20 centuries. So, 25 centuries. So from Socrates to 1999, and then from 2000 to 2050, more things were published in 2000 to 2050. We are living in philosophy's golden age. I don't know if philosophers will have the same impact that Plato and Aristotle and Descartes and Kant had. I don't know. We won't know until long after I die. Nobody knew when Plato was writing that Plato would have a big impact. So we need to die and see who has this influence. We really don't know. You can take surveys now and people can tell you who they think is important. And in 30 years, most of those names will not be on the list. And that's just in 30 years. People that were considered important when I started my studies, no one even reads now. So we don't know, but I do think we're in a golden age. I think there's a lot of brilliant people who are doing a lot of really brilliant work in philosophy. And I think we know now that it's much harder than Plato and Aristotle could have known.
Okay. Let's the next question. How do you explain the state of philosophy during corona virus and post-coronavirus philosophy? Will coronavirus change the way we look at and deal with issues in philosophy? Is it possible for topics to fall and new ones to emerge?
Yeah, I guess I have two sorts of thoughts. One is I think that for most of us, including most philosophers, as soon as the pandemic is over, everything will go back to exactly the same way it was before. People will be as selfish and unconcerned about other people. They're just sort of going to go on with their lives. I don't think it's going to lead to great changes in human beings thinking about our relationship to the environment, our relationship to the climate, our relationship to one another. For example, I think we've learned because of being isolated from other human beings, we've learned that part of our flourishing is to be in community with other human beings. And we long to be in community with other human beings. And when we get out, we'll still be in our small groups of human beings, with people who are like, small groups of human beings, our tribe. We'll be in our tribe with people who are like us. We won't reach out to people who are different. And we will have wasted an opportunity to reflect on how the world could be better when we come back into community. I think some philosophers see this sort of thing and are writing about it. I think there are issues that people are beginning to look at. Issues of acting in the common good. Issues of being more concerned about, for example, eating animals. There's a simple thing. The coronavirus may have come from human beings eating bats, or at least being near bats. Other viruses have come from people being near pigs, or being near cows, or being near, there are lots of things. Our relationship to animals that produce meat, our closeness to animals. There are a lot of things that I think people will begin to think about. Philosophers will begin to write about in different ways. Here's one prediction. I think more philosophers will become vegetarian. They will eat less meat, and they will think that it's not good for the world for us to eat so much meat. So I don't know what's going to be different after, but I already see people writing about different things than they wrote about before, and maybe they will keep doing that. Maybe they won't, but I think this gets to your next question, and I'm not good at predicting the future. No one is, but I think it could force philosophers to be more concerned about. Yeah.
Sir, please ask and you answer it to me. Okay?
Yeah, he asks about will post-corona philosophy approach
post-corona philosophy approach to man and existential state of man, and how do you predict it? Please answer.
Yeah, well, I will just say what I said before. I'm not a prophet. I don't make predictions about the future. I don't know what people will do in the future. I personally can't wait to be able to travel. For example, I want to come to Iran, and I want to bring Americans to Iran. I want to bring American thinkers to Iran, who will meet Iranian philosophers, who will meet Muslim philosophers, and will come back to the United States and be more committed to working for peace and compassion, and will understand Iran and Islam better. That's what I hope will happen. Much of the work that I do involves me traveling to primarily Muslim majority countries and trying to bring Muslims and Christians together, primarily philosophers and some theologians. So, and I haven't been able to do that because of the pandemic, but I have plans to do it. I hope to do more of it. With our new president, I have hope that we can have better relationships with Iran, and can do more. That we can do more. I've helped Iranians come to the United States, and Iranians have been parts of projects that I do. And I hope to have more of that happen. So, but this is me. I don't know what lots of other philosophers will do. I think they'll go back to teaching classes and writing on what they usually write about. But it will change some, but I don't know how. It would be interesting to watch and see how it changes people.
Sir, you say about Iran. I want to ask a question about a personal question. When was the last time you come to Iran?
I don't know. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago I came to Iran. It was too long. Slowly, I really enjoyed my time there.
Please, a bit slowly. Thank you.
Yeah. I think 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I came to a conference. Yeah, I was in Mashhad. I was in Qom, in Tehran, and Mashhad. And I was in a conference for Mohammad Motahari.
Mohammad?
Motahari.
Motahari. Okay.
Yeah. And I made many good friends, and I taught workshops in Tehran. I visited many universities, and I really enjoyed my time. I wrote about it in a major U.S. newspaper, and I really I wanted to come back 3 years ago, but I could not get a visa.
Sir, can I ask this? Why don't they give you a visa?
I don't know.
What's the problem?
It was from the problem was in Iran, and I had a group of U.S. PhD students, and everyone got a visa but me and one other student. So I had to cancel the conference in Iran. But I don't know why I didn't. They don't tell you.
This is just a moment.
Ramin, does anyone else have a question?
Yes, two question has just a moment. Sir, I searching the internet about you. It's it's said in Iran that you supported the homosexuals because for that they don't give you visa.
Oh,
it's true. Yes.
Yeah, I defended.
Yes, because you're defended.
Yeah, I defended the right of that the U.S. government should not have laws against homosexuality, and I argued that Christians should think that there shouldn't be laws. I argue that because I think we should want to live in a country that is free, and is really free in many, many ways, because what happens in countries when one religion is in charge is other people get hurt. So throughout history in the West, when Christians were, Christian kings hurt Muslims, they hurt Jews. When you have one religion in charge, people get hurt. So I argue that no religion should impose their views in a democracy on anybody. That it's better when religions don't do that, because then the freedoms that protect homosexuals are also the freedoms that protect people's right to worship God as they please. And so if you want to worship God in peace, you should want to live in a society that has a lot of freedom for people, not just for you, not just for your religious group, but the real pressure is on people who are different from you. That's where that creates a difficulty. So I defend the view from a Christian perspective that in America, we should have a lot of freedom. And so
the interesting news, sorry, in the internet about that if Clark apologize, will give him a visa. Apologize from the homosexual, the support of homosexual. You must apologize, and we give to a visa. It's not reasonable.
Oh, it says that on there in the newspaper?
Yes, this in internet I search about you, about the Mashhad. They say the Clark should apologize from the supported the homosexual. It's fun, very fun.
Yeah. Who do they think I should apologize to? I don't think they read my article. I didn't argue that there's nothing wrong with homosexuality. I just argued that homosexuals should have equal rights to Christians, and so should Muslims, and so should Jews, and so should Buddhists. I just argued in favor of freedom, and that's all I argued.
Yes, the homosexual is the homosexuals are human, and they have a right or
yeah.
this. Oh, I back to question, the 18th question. What will be the? I ask this, and last question. My
Yeah.
last question is that you, as the most important philosopher, and also the philosopher of interested to Iranians, can you describe your philosophical system?
Well, that's a pretty big question. When I come to Iran, maybe I can lead a workshop on my
Yes.
philosophical system, but
Yes,
I'm not.
yes, right.
I'm not. I would say this. I try as a theistic philosopher, so I try not most of the time to speak from a Christian perspective, but from like a monotheistic perspective. What is on views that Muslims, Christians, and Jews might all agree on about the nature of God. I try to use that to guide how I think about the world in really precise ways, how I understand different things. I learn a lot from science, so I work in cognitive science, and especially cognitive science of religion. I work with psychologists sometimes, and we do experiments in cognitive science of religion. So sometimes I do empirical work with psychologists, and I learn how they learn how our mind works. I learn a lot more now. I do a lot less abstract thinking and a lot more empirical thinking about how our minds really work. I think about evolution and how evolution may have shaped human beings, what it means to be evolved, created by God, but evolved. So what does it mean to be a creature? And so I look at those, and I'm not the most systematic. I don't try to develop a big system. I try to bring a lot of issues to bear on my best ability to understand something from where I start. And I start as a religious believer, thinking hard about the world that God's created. And then I, almost as a side, I think about issues of freedom and tolerance and compassion and peace. I think all of these go together. And I see how religions have resisted tolerance and compassion and peace, and how they've encouraged sometimes hatred and isolation and bigotry and injustice. And so those questions worry me, and I write about those things and try to communicate, not just to professional philosophers. I write books for the general public to try to communicate to 18-year-olds what it really means to be a follower of Jesus. It means to want to bring about God's kingdom on earth, and the kingdom is an exclusive kingdom of justice and peace and love. Okay. So what does that mean? That has consequences for how we live our lives. So I try to, I write sometimes books aimed at philosophers. At other times I write things aimed at 18-year-old people who are starting to come to their own views about how they should live their lives. And I try to write to them as well.
This is a big question, and your answer is very good. And sir, we finished all of question, but I want to say that can we co-write an article for the third case conference?
For the what? For what? Sorry.
I say that can we co-write write an article together for the third peace conference?
When will the peace conference be?
They say when the conference. They say Dr. Sia had say me the correct date.
Yeah, it might be possible, Ramin. Let's keep in touch about writing something.
Okay, and I don't know Dr. Sia had today email send email to you or not about the ambassador, the peace embassy.
Not today.
Not today. Okay.
Maybe 2 days ago.
2 days ago. Okay. Sir, thank you for your to you give your time to me. Sir, please recommend me to Susan.
Okay.
I need to teacher, the English teacher. Thank you. And a question, how do you evaluate this question? How do you evaluate this question?
What question? I'm sorry. These questions, you mean?
This question in the file, the 19th question.
Oh, they're very good. They could all have been a good question for 1 hour. Each one could have been a 1 hour question. So very good questions.
Thank you. Thanks. And how was the interview?
Very good, Ramin. I hope it's useful for somebody. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is first time I see you and I speak with you. Tell you, please. I'm very happy.
All right. Good.
Thank you. The last question, it's a little question. What do you think about my English? It's weak or so.
Think about your what?
My language.
Oh, I think if you want to go to school in America, it still needs to improve a little bit. Your written English is very good.
Thank you. I hope that I see you again and speak with you again in other time. And please inform about your book to me if you have time. Thank you. You 2 months. After 2 months, you done your book.
I hope. Yeah. The book on love. Yeah. I hope in 2 months it will be done.
Okay, sir. I sent a file in the email to you. Did you read this file or not?
Well, why don't we end the interview and then we can talk about
the golden rule. You read or not?
Yeah.
It's useful for you.
Ramin, let's talk about that later. Let's end the interview now.
Okay. Sir, thank you.
Okay.
Please say my respect to your family. Thank you.
Okay. All right. See everybody. Thank you for listening in.
Thank you. I cut. دوستان از همه شما ممنونم. خیلی ممنون که وقتتون رو گذاشتید. خیلی ممنون. خداحافظ.